guys, it's Doris from Love Lettering. So I've been obsessed with Ikea since I was a little girl, and I don't think I'm alone when I say this. That's why Ikea hacks are all the rage. The beauty of Ikea is that things are not that expensive. So I want to show that you can create something gorgeous with not a lot of money. Today for my tutorial, I'm going to be showing you an Ikea hack seating chart installation with my old, current, and forever obsession, Ikea. So today we're going to be working with this particular mirror, the YPPERLIG. They are $15 each, and what's nice about them is they have this little pocket in here. Usually I would assume it would be holding watches or like, you know, knickknacks or makeup or lipsticks, but we are going to be using it to create a seating chart installation. My go-to tools is tape. I always use a lot of tape, different sizes. This one is the 3M for delicate surfaces because we don't want to ruin or leave any residue on anything that we're taping, and the point of it is for it to be a quick and easy guideline. And then I also use the masking tape, low grade, like the recycled kind, the least tackiest one, in order for you to also not leave any residue. But I just like having different sizes for widths and for everything. So usually I may have like pages and pages of sketches, but in this case, I've just pulled out the ones that I feel like tell the story of our shoot today. So the original concept was something like this, creating a seating chart plan. As you can see, there's going to be lots of other details. We may have veered off of the design in the end, but you'll see the final reveal later. And then, so I always try to mimic what and how I'm gonna create the lettering onto the mirror for the seating chart. So I always practice my lettering beforehand, just so I can get a sense of repetition and how all the lettering and numbers are gonna look. Usually for seating charts, there's always like an element like a header or a welcome. In this case, the center one is going to be the name of the couple. I'm using Thomas and Christine today, and then maybe like you can usually put a date or a little quote or whatnot, because I don't like my lettering to get too close to the edge. So to keep myself from hitting the edge, I always create like a box that I would be lettering on. So this is helpful because I've already created my sketch, so I know that my lettering is going to be inside a box anyways. I always sketch on graph paper. Some people prefer like the dotted paper, which is okay too, your preference. I can't emphasize enough how important space is for the eye, for reading, signage. Yep, so by the end of it, you should have like, a little area of where you're going to be lettering, and then from there you can start. As mentioned, I do have a sketch already that I'm going to be working off of. In the meantime, what I would use to sketch on mirrors is my favorite, my #1 tool, which is the Stabilo All. This is great for mirror and glass, wood, and chalkboard. I basically use this pencil for almost every project that I do. In the meantime, I'm also going to be taping up like the sections of where I'm creating my lettering. So sometimes there is lettering that is just more free-flowing and just natural. People have their own unique styles, and sometimes I like to do more of like more of a formal script. So this one is kind of like a mix of both. A little bit of copperplate, a little bit of my own. I know there's going to be Thomas. I know there's going to be Christine. And then I know there's going to be a section in the middle where there's and. So I'm just mapping everything out just to make sure that everything is spaced out properly and that I have enough room for everything is kind of like what I want to make sure. So the eternity is ours. Like I feel like is just a small detail. So if I don't have enough room, I would make that smaller. So at this point, I would use my Stabilo All and I would start sketching what I have on paper onto my mirror. The great thing about the Stabilo All is that it's like it can be erased so easily just by a little bit of tissue or a microfiber cloth. But it's so helpful because otherwise you'd be using like marker, which I'm using later, but this is just kind of like my guideline. I've discovered this tool basically when I first started, and now it is my #1 go-to tool. So at this point, I would probably start lettering this with my Sharpie. I use the water-based Sharpie paint pen, not the oil-based. The oil-based is not as opaque, I find, and that one is still removable with rubbing alcohol or nail polish remover, but the Sharpie water-based is, you can remove it with water and a paper towel, or you can actually just scratch it off if you make any errors, which I feel like is much easier than removing oil. But everybody has their own preference. This one's just my preference. So if you're using the Sharpie paint pen, I would actually thicken my strokes as I go along. So I would do one letter and I'd stop. And I thicken the stroke before I start with this letter. The reason being is that if you let the paint dry, when you go to like fill in the thicker stroke at a later time, because the previous stroke is dried, you'll get like the gunkiness, and sometimes it scratches off your previous stroke. People always ask me, how do I get everything so opaque? It's like, I kind of like fill in as I go along. I don't wait till the end and then fill in, unless like I'm really in like a zone. Then I try to the most I'll do is like 2 letters and then I will fill in. But I think filling in, see like these strokes are already a little bit dry, I can feel it. Filling in is very important. So I also like the tape because I always like, you know, resaturate my tip of my paint pen while I'm working. It's really important to have your tip like saturated. Otherwise you're gonna get streaks and you're gonna get like, you know, like funny things happening. If you have a saturated pen tip, that like helps out a lot. So I always press my pens on the tape, which is like so helpful as well, as then like taking it off on a piece of paper. So I always use my Stabilo sketch as a guideline. Sometimes I correct myself when I'm like lettering. So if you take anything from this tutorial, it'll be fill as you go. So right now I'm gonna let this dry because I do have to fill in the and in between Thomas and Christine. So I just wanna make sure what's there is dry, because then I can actually like maneuver around it without worrying about it getting like smudged or whatnot. So in the meantime, I'm gonna work on the Eternity is Ours, which is like a little bit of a smaller lettering. So the Sharpie paint pen actually comes in 3 different sizes. There is an extra fine, which is great for like details in your type. There is the fine, which is the one I was using. That's majority, like I use this one like 80% of the time. And then for really, really large mirrors, there's also a Sharpie medium, which is just a thicker, this one has a thicker tip, and the extra fine has a thinner tip. So they're all like the same paints inside, and it's my favorite, it's my go-to. So for the Eternity Ours, because it's like smaller, I'm gonna use the extra fine to just get better detailing in there. At this time, I'm gonna remove the tape from the Thomas and Christine, and I'm gonna reuse it for the Eternity is Ours. This is my thing, I like to reuse a lot of my tape. So Eternity is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 letters. So basically I'm gonna have to put like the center would be in between the R and the N. So I'll just kind of eyeball everything, just find the center. So I usually work from center outwards just to Make sure everything is, like, I find the center of the mirror, find the center of the word, and then I work outwards from there. Because we're just sketching at this point. See, like, if I make a mistake, it's just so easy just to kind of correct myself. I can even wipe it away with my finger. So at this point, like, if I was done, I would use my measuring tape, and I would kind of like just see if I'm generally close, you know, both sides. So yep, I'm measuring, it's like 4 centimeters, you know, beside the E, beside the Y, it's about 4 centimeters. So my centering is basically correct. So as you can see, eternity, I've centered that already. So the next 2 words is, and then at the underneath is hours. So I know in the center panel here is going to be the is. So right now I'm going to do hours. So like, it's also 4 letters. So essentially, you know, like 1, 2, 3, 4. You can take the 4 letters from here and use that as a guide to center your own lettering for the hours. So this is kind of like how I save a bit of time, because, like, you know, it's not like I measure everything, but because, like, you have your Stabilo all, and, you know, it's so easy to sketch on and correct yourself if you're wrong. But you can kind of just, if you know these little tips and tricks, it kind of makes the project go by a little bit quicker. So I always use a soft tape. This is the reason being, like, a soft tape, you can actually like go into your surface, right? Because most things that I work on have a frame. If I had like a ruler like this, it would be quite, like, you know, awkward to kind of like measure things out sometimes. I never like to peel off the tape before I letter. I feel like the tape keeps me in line, so I always leave the tape on until I finish lettering, let it dry kind of, and then I peel it off. And then in the end, I'll go back in and I'll do the is. The trick is to have the right spacing in between each letter and making sure they're all about the same height. That's why the tape is so important, because you will stay within the tape. You wouldn't touch the tape, so it kind of keeps you in line. So I do like to use mirroring. So the and will probably be the same font as the eternity and ours. So mirror the same fonts here and there, creates a more cohesive look. So before I work on the Stabilo, I usually kind of give it a little bit of white, because, you know, I don't want it to affect the ink inside the Sharpie too much. So at this point, it's pretty much done. All I would have to do is remove the tape, and then I would give it a good polish, and that would be basically the centerpiece of my seating chart. So usually I just like to use a Kleenex to wipe off all of my sketches from the Stabilo all. The good thing about using a Kleenex is that you can still feel like you're lettering through the Kleenex, so you know not to rub too hard. You know if you're going to be scratching off your lettering or art. So, but for smudges, like, let's just say if you have a big smudge, or you have like a handprint or fingerprint, those are the things I would go in, you know, with the microfiber cloth, just to give it a good polish. Okay, I think we're good to go. So you have a little bit of dust from the Kleenex, so that's when you would kind of take your microfiber cloth, kind of go over it, you know, and then it's ready to go. There you go. The centerpiece is done. And now we're gonna do the tables, okay? I always do one, and then I always mirror the second one from the first, so that they all look as similar as possible. This is the example that I've done already. So this will be kind of like, how did I create this, like on here? So essentially we have to create a border again. So I've already measured this like previously. It is 7.5. So what I would do is I would measure this from the center, 7.5, just to make sure that that piece of tape hits the same spot, so that all of them, basically all the table numbers start at around the same height. If I'm working on individual pieces, I just work like piece by piece. I wouldn't do like all the table numbers first and then go in with my names. But if I was working on one large mirror, then I would do all the table numbers first, like all the the headers first. To create this look, I essentially have to tape it up to look like that. So I'm going in with my Stabilo all, doing my sketching. So essentially I've sketched table 1 out already. So I'm gonna go in with my Sharpie paint pen. And I always like to make sure, because it starts on this side of the tape, so I always want to make sure that the number is going to hit that side of the tape so that we know it's centered. Because like if I put it too close to table, then it's kind of like going to be off center. I take the same steps as I would as I was like doing, you know, a welcome sign. I make sure the letters almost touch the top and almost touch the bottom. Then I would remove the second piece of tape and then I'd line it up underneath the first. There we go. It's all done. So then you would just create however many table numbers there is how many you would letter, one after the other. And now we're ready to do the installation. For me, IKEA will always be a place for so much lettering potential. If you would like to see more IKEA hacks from me, please give this video a like. Feel free to leave a comment, maybe something you would like to see me letter on that you've seen at IKEA. And if you want to learn more about how to letter on glass, wood, chalkboards, mirrors, you can always find my tools, tips, and tricks in my book, Extraordinary Hand Lettering.